Hi everyone, today is the exciting day where we actually begin to build the Witches Cottage. So hopefully you've followed chapter 1 and 2 where you decorate first and install the windows and door. We've got the side panel here, if you remember we've wallpapered the inside, and then the black railings there are outside of the on the porch. And this is the 10.5-inch square base that I've got, and the side wall fits down onto the base. So it's better to lay the side wall flat and then the base juts up to it. I'm using my magnetic gluing jig that I'm homemade. There is another video about that, I'll put the link below. And I'm using standard wood glue. And go all along the bottom. As usual, I've put too much glue on. And then you want to put the base in at right angles to the mat and bring the side wall onto the base. Now, chipboard does warp, other types of wood will warp, especially if you put wallpaper on them. So I use magnets here to not only hold the right angle between these two pieces, but it also, because the magnetic board is underneath that side wall, the magnets kind of push the chipboard back down onto the mat and straighten that out whilst it glues. I use any magnets I've got to hand. If you didn't have magnets, I would still advise you to try and use something to hold the right angle and weigh it down. I kind of like the magnets because they work in two directions. As they'll kind of magnet down to the mat and you can push them up against a right angle. You see I've got any old weights here that I've got off my jewellery bench. And for any of the time to be patient when waiting for the glue to go off, I think this is one of the most important times, because you want a really sort of well set glue joint here, and you want those edges to be as straight as possible. So I'm just fiddling around here, making sure everything's pushed up against my steel rule, and I leave that to set. So it's been at least an hour and it's gone off nice and dry, so I'm take all the weights off now. Some of them are a little bit stuck because there was some glue seepage, but I know I'm going to cover this floor anyway, so I wasn't too worried about the glue seeping out. And I've got the Teflon sheet there over the metal sheet so that I don't get glue marks on the metal sheet. It comes off easily off of the Teflon sheet. It will be slightly delicate because there's only one sort of edge glued, so you be careful, but it's a lovely right angle corner. There is some movement, so it's still like you want to be as careful as you can. I'm just checking the whole joint here. If there were any gaps, I would possibly seep some super glue in there to strengthen it. Chipboard does have a tendency to layer, and the layers will sometimes pull out. I don't think you can see it there, but there was a little bit of lift there. Oh, you can see that better. So I didn't want that to compromise the strength of the structure, so I just get some super glue and it use it as like a capillary action, so you only need to touch it to the gap and it kind of seeps along by itself. And this is Cricut brand chipboard that I'm using. In the UK here, our chipboard is different, so I use the Cricut brand. And I know I'm going to paint this bit black in the future, so the fact that there's some super glue on there, it gets covered up with black paint. So I pull that out slightly to remake the 90-degree angle, and I leave that to set. And it's perfect. It does what I need it to do. That's just an old card I've got there to spread the super glue out if there's any seepage. Obviously you don't want to use your fingers for that. It goes off quite quickly as well. So once I'm happy that that has dried, we now get the back frame piece. Now we've designed this cottage, so rather than having a solid black wall, we've created a picture frame effect. That gives you the choice of having the front of the cottage facing the room, or you can spin it round and you're looking into the rooms as if through a picture frame. So we've put that down on the mat, and again this fits onto the base and the side wall, so it's kind of on the inside of the two. And then this is where the wall with the doors and windows in fits in and up to those side railings, but I'm only showing you that, we're not about to glue those. So you can see how nice and exactly that back frame fits in. I'm just dry fitting the other side on here to make sure that that will also fit onto the bottom wall. It's very, very tight. We've made the measurements to fit exactly. If you do find that maybe the chipboard you got is slightly thicker, you can always take a file or a knife and just cut a small trim edge off that back picture frame piece. And you can see there the bowing of that wallpapered wall. But as we glue it and press it and clamp it, it does take that bowing out. Now I'd already put the sort of picture frame detailing on this piece, but you don't have to have had that done by this stage, you can do it later. I just like to glue it down flat and press it. So I'm just checking out how I want to set that up. Get the wood glue again, and I'm going to be gluing two sides here. The side that fits against the wallpapered wall, and then the longer side that fits onto the bottom, the floor. And if you go to fit it and realise you've just glued the wrong edge, you can wipe it off. It won't matter. Try not to get glue on the wallpaper. If you do, wipe it off quickly. And then slowly begin to bring the back wall frame in and push up to the side against the right angle. Excuse my head getting in the way. And then again here I like to use the magnets to push everything in. And once you've got enough magnets and weights, we leave that to dry again. So that's now dry. I come in and take off the magnets. The back frame wall was pretty straight, so I didn't need to weigh that down to straighten it out. The structure is a little bit stronger now. We've got 3 sides glued, or 3 edges glued. It's amazing how quickly it takes shape. So have a good check of all your joints. I'm looking at the back frame piece here, checking there's no gaps. You can see the detailing there. And I can see there's some glue that's seeped out. So go and get a cocktail stick, scrape that off if you can. At the end of the day, I'm going to be painting over that sort of raw edge of the chipboard anyway, so ideally I'd have had less glue squeezing out. You could always trim it with an X-Acto knife as well. So now we get the other side wall. So this is we painted it pale green on the inside and black on the outside. And that is going to fit on top of the floor piece and to the outside edge of the back wall. So again, as we did the side piece, if you remember, which isn't a great camera angle for this, we put the side wall on the mat first and then we butt the floor up to it, and the back wall frame sits on top of it. And you'll know when you've got it right because all the edges fit flush and it becomes this complete box. We've designed it so that it's exactly 10.5-inch square all the way round. So whichever way you think works for you to glue this piece on, do that. You might have more of a bow in the floor or you have more of a bow in the side wall, so you want to really glue it where you can use weights to press the bowing out and keep all the edges as flat as possible. So I'm just having a fiddle here thinking, okay, it fits up nicely against the back frame wall. There's a little bit of bowing there. So I want to put glue on the bottom of the side wall because it sits onto the base, and I need glue on the side of the back frame wall because that butts up to the side wall. and the glue then along the bottom of that side panel. And we put it down with the back wall on the mat and fit the side wall onto the bottom of the floor there and the side of the back wall frame. And if you're slightly struggling, I suggest go back and watch this bit a couple of times and use your pieces without glue and get in the rhythm of the way you're going to put them together once you've got the glue on. So much easier to do dry fits. So just using the magnets again, pushing them up to the right angled side. You can see already how sturdy this is becoming. Now you just want to watch that top corner, because this does want to bow, that the railing is flush with the outside edge there. I'm using a little bit of tape just to hold that corner. And press it down. And this is when a gluing jig's really handy, because you kind of need to push it in several directions at the same time. You could tape the whole of that joint while it goes off. The only problem I found, and I think I must have extra strong masking tape, is that sometimes it likes to pull either the top layer of chipboard, matte board or craft board off. I need to find some lower tack masking tape, so I don't use it very much. So I'm just fitting magnets here wherever I can, inside and outside, just to push everything together. Also, now is a good time, if you've got any glue squeezing out, to run something along that edge. Make sure everything's square and then leave it to dry. So now the back frame wall has dried. You can see here there's flooring gone in. I don't need to have it in at this stage. I just had received the new debossing tip and couldn't help myself, but don't worry about that. I'll show you how to do that in another video. So I'm dry fitting the wall, the front wall, with the doors and windows fitted. Again, if you find this a little snug, just use some sandpaper or a file. There might be a bit of glue in one of the corners that wants to push this out, so just check everything's clean and square. And if you've got anywhere that's obviously a little bit tight, just rub it down slightly. You can see there one of my walls still wants to bow, and this is normal with any sort of wood-based product or paper-based product. Just pushing it in, making sure that I don't want to make any adjustments. And this wall fits up to the railings. If you remember, we glued a second set of railings onto the inside of the side walls, and they provide a really handy locator for this wall to glue up against, so that you know it's in exactly the right place. And you want to make sure also that this wall isn't bowing, say unnaturally, as if it was too tight on the sides, and it gives at the weakest point, which is where the door is, because that's where the hole is. So make sure that the wall is straight and that the door opens and closes freely. So again, we're going to put glue along the bottom of the front wall. Remember not to put glue on the bottom of the door as we're going along, because that would be very easy to do, and we don't want to actually glue the door shut. And we glue the side wall of the front door panel. and the other side wall of the front panel. And then making sure, which I just about realised, you've got the outside wall facing outwards, and here I accidentally started putting it inwards. You just slide the front wall into place. You can just gently pull one of the outside walls outwards, not enough to break any of the glue that's already set, but just so that you don't lose all your glue as you slide it in place. This is when I realise I've got it the wrong way around. So you put it in the right way around. And just make sure that the bottom wall is kind of square and not bowing out or in. When you look from the top down, you can see if it's sort of in a straight line or not. And again, you could use weights or magnets to pull or push any of that wall in or out to level it up. And you also want to make sure that the front wall sits against those railings on the outside. So take your time to just sort of position everything. I'm going to use magnets again. Excuse my head again. You can see there I'm just using those on that bottom wall, the bottom of the wall there, to push. It was wanting to bow out slightly, so I'm just pushing them back in. And then all of these walls along the top will be flush, so make sure you've pushed that wall down from the top as well. And just constantly check all the corners, all the joins. The glue will start to grab and dry quite quickly, so sometimes you can just literally hold it in place and it will start to set. And I'm just going to use some clips here to sort of push the top of that wall against the locators on the porch railings. And I'm looking at the walls bowing out here and thinking probably the best way to sort of straighten up those walls so that they make contact with the front wall all the way down is to actually flip this on its side and weight the walls down. I have difficulty getting my gluing jig piece of sheet metal off of the silicone sheet there, so because the magnets are adhering it all together, this works surprisingly well. So I've got it hanging off the front of the bench at the minute because of the clips that were holding the top of that wall. I'm just checking and thinking how best to weigh this down. And I'm actually putting my metal bench block on that wall, and it's only just enough to sort of straighten that wall out and make sure it meets the glued edge all the way along. And I really did feel like one of those people at the beach that put the balancing stones on top of each other, because you don't want any sideways movement on this. You know, it could sort of squish it, so you just need it to go balanced and straight down. If you've got that 20 minutes, you could just put your hands either side and hold it while it glues. So here's a couple of photographs of that from different angles. The magnets are still doing their thing, and we've completed the construction of the ground floor. So we'll leave that to dry and we'll start on the attic room and roof construction next. Now I glued this bit before I remembered to press record. So here we have the back wall frame of the gable end glued onto the interior side of the roof panel, and this is the one that I put the wallpaper on. It doesn't matter which side you start with. The really important thing here is to make sure you've got your triangle the right way up. That's with the longest edge on the bottom. So here I'm just dry fitting the other side of the roof panel, and then the gable end with the window in fits on the other side, but we don't need to worry about that at this point. So I'm removing the magnets. Again, this is the time when that join is probably its weakest because there's just one glued edge there. So be careful with that. And these roof pieces are designed just to butt up to each other. They're slightly bowed again from the paint and paper. And I actually did mine where one side slightly overlapped the other to create a gluing edge. You could just butt them up together because we have the ridge tile that's going to go over the top and hide the gap. But I decided I wanted to actually glue one onto the other just to make it stronger. Gluing one onto the other will make the edge at the lower edge 2 mil shorter on one side than the other, but once you put the shingles on, you don't even notice that. So we lay it down flat and get our wood glue. You can see I've gone for the slightly distressed paint job in my attic room. And remember, we're not gluing the bottom edge of that back frame, it's the side. And then this is where I glue the top edge of one roof panel, and I'll butt that up against the sort of inside top edge of the other roof panel. So I've got the papered ceiling down flat on the magnetic gluing jig sheet, and I bring the other top roof ceiling panel over so it butts up and fits against that edge and then comes down onto the frame edge of the gable end. I've got a weight in there, and I use a weight on the other side to push. You can just see the bowing there, it pushes that back out straight. And then you want to check that either end is level. And I'm using my magnets to make sure the bottom roof panel is flat as well, to straighten out that bowing. And you can put magnets either side, and where they sort of try and click onto each other, that's when they pull it in tight. And again, you don't need the magnets. I just like to get on with something else and know that it's secure while it's drying. So I've left that to dry, and I take the magnets off. Very carefully, lift it away, and it's all nicely set and square. I'm checking for gaps. I've seen a few little gaps, and I'm going to just quickly run some super glue along that seam. It will seep into the gaps, and then when I press it, it will quickly take. Super glue can leave a shiny edge, so if you didn't want that, don't use super glue, or you might want to paint over it afterwards with a matte paint or varnish. Just propped a weight under there to tip it slightly so that the super glue sort of stays in that seam and doesn't run out. Now I realised at this point I'd actually decorated the attic room ceilings into the overhang, which I don't want to have them from the outside, the colour that they are, but once I fitted this gable end window wall, I just painted over them. So learn from my mistakes and don't paper the whole of that wall right up to the edge. You actually want to set this gable end wall back from the front edge of the roof by a distance of 2 centimetres, which is 20 millimetres and just over 3/4 of an inch. And that gives you a lovely overhang. So I'm just using a spare piece of mat board I had here to get a straight edge, so I know where to glue my gable end wall. Make sure you've got the wall the right way round with the outside on the outside. Just dry fitting it here again so that I'm happy that when I line it up to the lines it looks okay. And then we apply the glue on the top edges, which are the shorter ones. and glue it in place. So straighten it out, weight it down, use magnets, and then leave it to dry. Once it's dry, you want to check again to see if there's any seams that might have a gap. Because I kept my roof separate, I didn't glue it onto the ground floor. I wanted this to be sort of super strong. So I'm reinforcing again with super glue. That's entirely optional. The super glue does run along the seams, so kind of less is more when it comes to super glue. So there's the finished roof structure. Check it all over, make sure there aren't any gaps, there's no daylight coming through, you're happy with all the joins. It's really beginning to take shape, you can almost imagine somebody in there now. So we're looking down on the roof, I've just taken the roof off, and this is the ceiling of the ground floor and the roof of the attic. It's completely your choice if you want to glue the ceiling onto the ground floor, and then glue the roof on, or glue the attic floor onto the roof structure and lift it on and off of the ground floor, which is what I've done. So here's my roof. This would now be the front of the house. I'm just dry fitting the floor onto the roof. That will become the ceiling of the ground floor. If you wanted to, you could cut another 10.5 square piece of chipboard and fit that onto the ground floor and keep the two things completely separate, each with their own sort of ceiling and floor. I wanted to get in and take photographs, say from the top looking down, that's why I've left these in two pieces. So it all fits lovely, it's nice and square. And I have at this point, I've painted the underside of that so that when it sits on the ground floor, the ceiling's sort of the right colour for the ground floor room. I'm just working out now which way up I want to glue it. So the gable end walls, they again sit onto the floor. So we put the glue along the bottom edge of those. This is quite a nice sturdy structure now. And then making sure you've got your floor the right way up so that if you've painted your ceiling, it's facing below. You put the floor up to the glued edges of the gable ends. Make sure they're pressed in nice and firmly. Again, there might be some bowing if you've painted or papered that floor already. Check that it's level at both ends. And then again, I'm using my weights just to push everything in and create some tension while the glue dries. Now, to hold the corners of the floor up against the gable end wall, I decided to use some grips. They're not an exact science, but they do just enough to keep the pressure up. Because that's quite an awkward angle. So once that's dried, we're going to glue the edges. You might be able to see the ceiling, which is the floor, is slightly bowed in that shot, which is why I like to do this gluing in 2 stages. It would be difficult to correct this bowing when you're gluing the gable ends down to the floor. So we run glue along both seams. And then I turn it over and I put it down flat, and I haven't got this on video for some reason, but I just put one of my weights inside, and it just takes the slight bowing out of that floor and keeps it straight whilst it dries. And that's the roof done. So here is what we've built so far. The roof sits on top of the base perfectly. You could glue this down at this stage if you wanted to, but I found it's definitely easier to decorate the inside or put furnishings in and lighting with still being able to take the roof off. And this elevation gives you a great view of the back wall picture frame details, and those are included in the SVG bundle if you wanted to add those too. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Next time we add the shingles and the ridge tiles. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.